Hello, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about why you should buy the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, before we dive into this, it's important to know that there's 3.32 billion people that play games worldwide and 129 people that annually play Nintendo games. Now, that's a lot of people. But let's dive into what Nintendo was beforehand. So they were a card company. Not quite these cards, but you get the idea. They were a card company, and then they rose to fame from this game called Donkey Kong, which was an arcade game that I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, are well aware of. And now they're currently making Nintendo games, but there's some current controversy that people are wondering. They're wondering if it's worth it to buy a Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I actually have my own Nintendo Switch 2. And there's a lot of key things that make this Switch better than the original. Obviously, it's a lot harder, but there are some bigger things. These Joy-Cons are magnetic. That is so much nicer than to slide them up and down. These Joy-Cons are also a lot bigger, so they're easier to hold. They make less noise. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's a lot less noise off of these little ones. They also got a Pro Controller, which makes a lot less noise too. It's a little bit quieter. I don't know if you can hear that, but this is something else that comes with the Nintendo Switch 2 that you can't get with the Nintendo Switch 1. You'll get louder game controllers, you'll get smaller little Joy-Cons, which is a lot harder to use in games. I've experienced the Nintendo Switch 1 through borrowing it, and it's just not as good, to be honest. The current controversy between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 is the Nintendo Switch 2 is $150 more. It's $450 to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 compared to the $300 that is the Nintendo Switch 1. It was actually raised recently to incentivize people to buy the Nintendo Switch 2. And unfortunately, they aren't going to lower the prices. If we're being realistic here, the Nintendo Switch 2 will have further access to all of these games that are coming out. So the Nintendo Switch 1 games are all backwards compatible. I can't even talk. Backwards compatible with the Nintendo Switch 2, which is important to know because you can transfer all of your data from the old Switch to the new Switch, which is very useful because then you don't have to buy the Nintendo Switch 2 and start all of your games from scratch. You bring over all your saved data, you get access to all of the future games that the Nintendo Switch 2 has to offer. And, consoles last a long time. The Nintendo Switch 2 is probably going to last another decade because the Nintendo Switch 1 lasted 10 years. So the Nintendo Switch 2 has all of this time to build its own games. It has some games already like Mario Kart World, which I actually don't have with me right now, but it has all these other games. It has Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's going to have Smash Bros. And Mario Party because every single console since those were created has had those games. They have Mario Party, they have all of these games, and honestly, it's great. There are questions that people are doing, like, what if I don't have enough money on me to buy the Nintendo Switch 2, or what if I'm not going to get my usage out of it? Well, buying the Nintendo Switch 2, think about it like this. If you have this extra money that you save it from a shift, or you decide not to go out to eat for a couple weekends and just kind of budget your money so you can buy this Nintendo Switch 2, you're going to get your money back. And as far as entertainment goes, if you're going to use your Switch over these years, you'll have all that fun. You can bring it over with friends and all that. I bought my Nintendo Switch 2 because I'm on MSUM's esports team, playing Smash Bros. And all that. And I go to these, gatherings every 2 weeks, which is really fun. A lot of people use my Switch for Smash Bros. And then I even brought it over for a Mario Kart event, which was awesome. You know, it's just a fun console. And, you know, if you don't have the money right now, that's okay. You don't have to go out and buy it. But, you know, I'm trying to show you guys that it's worth the money if you're willing to go out and spend that extra $150 or that $450 if you already have the Nintendo Switch 1. It's worth it. It's going to pay off over time, and you'll get access to all those games that otherwise you wouldn't have access to. And you'd be like, oh shoot, I want to play this game, but I just don't have access to it. Well, that solves your problem. And, you know, I think it's worth it to go out and buy, you know. But if you guys don't have enough money, that's completely fine. The Nintendo Switch 1 still is a good console, and you'll still have access to the games. You just won't get the new releases of the Nintendo Switch 2. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for listening.